Hello and welcome to Tomi Talks TV, the place to be to build great love relationships. I'd like to start once again by saying a very big thank you to you. Thank you for all your likes and your shares and your comments on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. I really appreciate it because you're helping us spread the message further faster. So thank you very much indeed. And today I'm going to be taking one of your questions and it goes like this. I'm in my late 20s. And I've been in a long distance relationship for about 5 years now. I'm a graduate, but he isn't. As it is now, I'm ready to settle down, but he isn't ready due to financial challenges on his own part. We both love each other. Since he is not financially stable, should I leave him for another person, wait for him, or support him financially to marry me? Now, this is a very tricky question. I do get, a lot of questions of this sort, from women who are in this sort of situation. And usually what I say is I do not recommend terminating a relationship simply because of a person's financial state. So simply because at that particular point in time, maybe financially he's not able to, do what you think he ought to be able to do towards getting ready for marriage. So that's usually what I say, because it's not ideal to make a permanent decision based on what could be a temporary situation. On the other hand, if you've been in a relationship now for 5 years, that's a long time to be in a relationship with someone without a definite commitment to when you're going to get married. So you haven't actually said here what his own view is or what he's thinking in terms of when you could possibly get married. So maybe that's a conversation that you actually need to have as to what exactly his plans are, and when does he think realistically you could get married, and then you would look at that and see whether that works for you or not, and that will help you to make an informed decision. I also need to say that sometimes I always say to people, look, I would encourage you to think very carefully about what exactly you mean by financially stable, because sometimes you find that, because maybe people have grown up, at a certain, financial standard, a certain standard of living that they've had, growing up in their families with their parents, they automatically want to start from there when they get married themselves. But what they don't realize is that their parents also had, beginning times, growing times. And I always say, I encourage couples to grow together, to develop together. So, where you are currently is not necessarily where you're always going to be, but there's benefit in growing together as a couple. I mean, certainly a man needs to be able to put a roof over his family's head, and he needs to be able to, put food on the table. But beyond that, then you need to look at what exactly is important, what needs to be in place for us to get married. I always encourage, don't plan for a massive expensive wedding if you cannot afford it, because what you should be planning for is actually the marriage, not so much the wedding. So you need to think about it, clearly, and ask yourself, when you're talking about financial stability, what exactly do you mean by that? Define it and see, whether you're being realistic in your expectations. I would strongly recommend that you don't step in to take his part and, as you said, do everything that needs to be done for you to get married. Because you see, when a woman steps in to take the part of the man, then that effectively emasculates him, because, what you've done is that you've not given him the opportunity to rise to the occasion and, to be what he ought to be in the marriage. And that sets a pattern which, could eventually become, a cycle in your marriage later on. No doubt that there might be times in marriage where, maybe you're more financially stable than he is, that sort of thing. You're called to step in and help, but you're not called to take his part as a man. So he needs to feel that he's taking responsibility for the marriage, and he needs to bring himself to the point where he actually is able to do, what is required, at least for you to get married and to, to have a reasonable lifestyle after you get married. Now, the last thing that I will say is that you've mentioned that, he is not he's not a graduate and you are, and I thought that was was an interesting point. So you need to ask yourself, is this something that bothers you? Because for you to mention it, I'm not entirely sure whether you think that that's the reason, that's one of the factors that is affecting his finances, or whether it's something that bothers you. And you need to look at that very carefully, because while there are no particular issues with getting married to someone who doesn't have the same kind of education that you do, but you need to be clear that if you do get married to him, you can give him the respect that he deserves as a husband. So you need to be able to, respect his opinions. You need to be able to defer to him, sometimes in situations and all that. So be clear in your mind that this is not an issue for you, because if it's an issue for you, then it will be an issue after you get married. Well, I hope this has helped you. If this has helped you, then please leave me a message on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube. And if you've got a question you would like me to answer, then head on over to tomitalks.com/ask and I'll answer your question next time. See you next time. Bye-bye.